Coming up next on Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable, a measure to legalize marijuana in Arizona makes the November ballot, and corporation commissioners block an attempt to investigate if the commission is being influenced by APS and others. The Journalists Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable. I'm Ted Simons. Joining us tonight, Jim Small of the Arizona Capital-Times, Bob Christie of the Associated Press, and Luigi Del Puerto of the Arizona Capital-Times. Arizona voters will get a chance to decide on an initiative that allows for the recreational use of marijuana. Thus is born Prop 205.
Yes.
Talk to us about it.
Well, so this is something that has been in the works for really a couple of years now. The idea that, okay, Arizona's got medical marijuana, and now the next step, as we've seen in a number of other states that first went down the medical marijuana route, is to fully legalize recreational use and small amount possession by everybody. It's someone, you don't have to go to a doctor, you don't have to get a special card, you don't have to jump through the very low hoops, the pretty large hoops that we have for the medical marijuana program. You don't have to go through any of that. Essentially, anybody who's over the age of 18 would be able to purchase, possess, and consume marijuana, and it would create some tax revenue, and it would be, regulated, limited as to who could sell it and where they could sell it and things like that.
Up to 1 ounce, can possess up to 6 plants in your home. Again, what is the federal law regarding marijuana?
Well, marijuana is a class
One
Schedule 1 drug, which means there is no legal use for it. You can't use it in research unless you get a special dispensation. It's illegal on the federal basis. However, states have been legalizing it. Colorado, Washington have been legalizing it over the last few years, and the federal government has taken a hands-off approach. And that's probably not going to change. I mean, they're not going to send the FBI and arrest 100,000 Colorado people and shut down all of the marijuana retailers. It can't happen. That horse is out of the barn. However, getting it on the ballot is just the first step in Arizona. Then you have to get it by a court challenge at the chamber. County Attorney Bill Montgomery, Maricopa County, Yavapai County Attorney Sheila Pokin, and a bunch of other folks were in court today trying to keep it off the ballot. Their argument was, listen, when you sign the petitions, and there was 250 some odd turned in, when you sign the petitions, there's a description on the top of the ballot that says what we're doing. It says we're going to regulate marijuana like alcohol. We're going to allow cities and towns to regulate where the locations are. We're going to do some other things. And they said, listen, they listed 5 things in that 100-word summary. There's 22 major provisions. They all should have been in there. You've got to throw it out because the voters were deceived.
And what else was heard at this hearing today? I mean, was that the basis there?
The crux of the argument is that this, when they were circulating the petitions, it was confusing and misleading because it didn't include the other provisions. And then, in addition to that, the 100-word summary that's going to be on the ballot, it's too short to accurately describe what's going to be enacted into law if voters approve this measure. The no side, those who are opposed to it, are saying it doesn't go into the fact that it would have multiple effects on DUI laws, even on court family cases. An array of laws that would be affected are not on the description, or not in the description, and as a result of that, people will be deceived. And essentially, it's going to be it's a fraud, is what they're saying. They call it a fraud.
Is this the kind of thing that the opposition is just going to say no matter what? I mean, they're out there for no holds barred here.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways. I mean, I think you can look at this lawsuit. I mean, these lawsuits are almost kind of pro forma at a certain point that they exist. The claims in this one, I think, generally, you make a lot of claims. Some of them are probably better than others. Some of them probably you're more confident in than others, but you throw a lot of things against the wall to see what sticks. When it comes to this summary issue, I think really what the judge is going to weigh is, okay, what is the core part of this initiative, and what are the laws that then are implemented or subsequently put in there to implement that. things like the DUI provision, things like some of those other things that they were harping on that the opposition says, well, look, this is a core provision. It changes DUI laws. Well, is it a core provision, or is the core provision changing, legalizing marijuana, and then there's dominoes that fall after that in order to properly implement this program, you have to change a dozen other laws.
I was going to say, if you're supposed to have a 100-word summary, I think the operative word there is summary.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You cannot, this is a 10,000-word initiative that has multiple provisions in it. And there's absolutely no way. We've seen this with, clean elections. We've seen it with not kids care, the smoking tax that, that passed a few years ago. Almost every one of these has multiple provisions, and you can't boil it down. There's just no way.
Right. Even the judge had noted that for the opposite side to describe the things that are not in the 100-word summary, it took them 4 pages to do it. And so, you can't. It's simply impossible to boil it down to 100 words.
The closest they're going to get probably on this is 2 specific provisions. They say that the description that we're going to regulate marijuana like alcohol is false because we're not, because we're making other changes. The other is that the private part, you can use it privately. Well, the plaintiffs, the chambers, and plaintiff pointed out, or lawyer pointed out today that one of the things this does, and I didn't even know it because I haven't, lawyered it for night after night after night, was allow retailers to also set up an area in the store where you could consume. So his argument is, listen, the voters weren't told you're making marijuana bars. That's what this does. We'll see whether the judge takes that as a major issue or not.
Right. The pro side argued that regardless of what the text of the 100-word summary is, and regardless of the text of the actual ballot initiative, the judge or the courts, the lawyer saying, doesn't have the authority to essentially preempt the voters from enacting this law. It would be akin to the court saying, a draft of a legislation is invalid or unconstitutional or illegal. If there are questions about certain provisions of the law, or whether it's confusing, misleading, or there's something that's fraudulent in the text, that should be litigated after the voters have had a chance to weigh in and pass this law.
Okay, so we've got this thing that is, for now, going to make the ballot, Prop 205, and again, it establishes licensed shops and a retail tax on cannabis that would then be used for education, schools, and these sorts of things. Another aspect of marijuana in Arizona comes out of Snowflake, the marijuana capital of Arizona. What's going on in Snowflake?
It's set to be the marijuana capital of Arizona. There's a company that has a big greenhouse up there, and they went to the city council and says, we want to start growing medical marijuana in this huge greenhouse. And it went through the planning commission up in Snowflake, and it was rejected. It went to the city council, and guess what? It passed. And now there's a lawsuit against it. And then today, or last night, there's a new state law that allows any lawmaker to file a complaint with the Attorney General that says a municipality has violated this new law. Therefore, if they don't rescind their action, they lose all of their state shared revenue, which is, for all the cities and towns, is $1 billion. And so that is the first formal complaint filed with the Attorney General. And amazingly, what it looks at is a public meeting violation.
Yes.
That's the first thing, which is, I don't know if anyone who passed this in the legislature thought that a routine public meeting violation that normally gets fixed with a phone call to the AG.
Yeah, there might have been some zoning regulations in there as well. But
Right.
this was this law that started with the governor's State of the State speech, which was basically, if you're a city and town and you don't do like we want, watch out. And it sounds
Right.
like snowflakes, didn't do what they want.
Right. So the governor said at his state address that cities and towns better toe the line. If you don't, you're going to get hammered. And eventually, this law was passed. And so we were in the newsroom yesterday. We were asking ourselves whether that law would allow a complaint that was filed by Representative Paul Boyer. By the way, he's from Glendale.
That's not very close to Snowflake.
No, it's not very close to Snowflake. But Boyer is one of those who are stridently against the legalization of marijuana, or just the marijuana use. And so the law is very broad. It says that a lawmaker could complain, or has the power, the authority to complain to the Attorney General if there is a perceived violation of any state law or the Arizona Constitution. So on that basis, if there's a legislature that has any complaint whatsoever, could go to the Attorney General and say, hey, investigate this town or investigate the city.
And like with the Boyer situation, Representative Boyer does not want marijuana in any way eased. He finds some spot around the state where it might be being eased. He can go ahead and make that complaint. Law says he can do it.
Yeah, and the law also says the AG has to investigate it and has to go through this process. They don't have discretion to say to give it a cursory read and say yay or nay on it. Yeah, I mean, I think this was something that was talked about during the legislature. Was there is there's a possibility of I guess one person's abuse is another person's watchdog, but a possibility of a lot of complaints getting filed. It certainly not out. It doesn't take a whole lot of imagination to imagine a legislator with an axe to grind against a city or an industry or something like that, who goes around and files these complaints in order to affect a change or stop things from happening and maybe stop other cities from trying to think about going down a certain path with certain policies.
And we should mention that this is already a factor down in Bisbee for a variety of reasons, not the least of which now is this plastic bag dispute, which apparently a senator from Hereford, which is not in Bisbee, at least it's relatively close, says, hey, you can't do that. I mean, you can file a complaint all over the state.
You sure can. And the issue is, the senator, this is Gail Griffin from down in southern Arizona, asked Attorney General Mark Brnovich to look into the plastic bag ban in Bisbee, which there's already a lawsuit. Bisbee says we can do it because we're a charter city. They've been fighting for years, but Gail wants the AG to say, if you don't rescind it, you're going to lose all your state tax money. Well, he didn't accept the complaint. He says, put it in the right form, but it is not prospective. So what he said is it can be retroactive. So you could have passed a law 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, and if we investigate it and find out that it shouldn't be on the books, you can lose all your money unless you take it back.
But what about that charter city aspect? I mean, the Constitution says you can make your own laws, doesn't it?
Right, and in fact, it is already a subject of a lawsuit. There was a case filed by a city councilor in Tempe against this very law, and it says that you can't dictate to a charter city how to manage local matters. And so this is why it's very important. This is the Paul Boyer case, is the first case, and now the Attorney General has to find a way to investigate this without overextending itself. And I say that because I can foresee a whole lot of complaints to the Attorney General's office, and of course the Attorney General's office has other jobs that it needs to do, and so therefore it creates all sorts of questions really about its budgeting, but more importantly, how it proceeds could foretell whether we're going to have more complaints or not.
And we should mention that the punishment is that loss of shared revenue. That's a big deal for small places like Bisbee, like Snowflake.
Or for Phoenix. I mean, 60% of cities' budgets comes from state revenue. That's sales tax and income tax that, decades ago there was a deal cut where cities wouldn't impose their own income tax if the state shared some of theirs with them. And so they get 60% of their revenue for police and fire and libraries and all that stuff is tax money that's paid by taxpayers and then sent back to the city.
Yeah.
So it's a huge deal.
All right. Jim, we talked last week about the Corporation Commission and Commissioner Bob Burns wanting to hire an attorney, kind of did hire the attorney to a certain degree, to look at the Corporation Commission in general, not necessarily focused on commissioners or staff, but in general to see if outside influences, like, I don't know, APS, might have influence on the commission. Well, that attorney is not going to be able to do his job. What happened?
Well, there was a very contentious meeting yesterday afternoon. The commissioners sat around a table, not too unlike this one, and laid into each other, really. And had kind of an airing of grievances about this issue, and a lot of the rhetoric that's been around surrounding the Corporation Commission for much of the last year, really longer, but especially coming out of Bob Burns for a lot of the last year. And essentially the commission voted 3-1 to not allow Bob Burns to hire this attorney, not spend $100,000 on this investigation into the potential influencers of the Corporation Commission and its members.
So basically, we're not going to hire the attorneys who could tell us and put some transparency into the whole situation. Is that what they're saying?
Right, and in fact, that was one of Bob Burns' counter arguments yesterday, that But he was essentially saying, look, if there's a perception out there that the Corporation Commission is paid and bought for, and in order for us to tell the public that is not the case, this is a tool we can use. We can hire a lawyer, we can investigate so-called outside influences, and sort of, in a way, restore credibility to the commission, let the people know this is in fact not going on. But the other commissioners, and it got very personal, by the way, the other commissioners are saying, look, you've been tarnishing our reputation for the better part of the year by going around during your campaign and telling people that I'm going to restore integrity to the commission by saying that you are, in effect, tarnishing us, maligning our reputation, and it got pretty bad.
Well, Burns has gone even further than that, though. I mean, Burns has been, part of his campaign, a plank of his campaign is, re-elect me, I'm the one that's down there fighting for you. I'm the one that's not in the pocket of the utility. The implication there is very much so that the other people that I'm sitting next to on this dais are bought and sold.
Right, and this goes back to the 2014 election, where an entity, an out-of-state group, spent $3.2 million to support two Republican candidates, Tom Freese and Doug Little, who were elected. And it's widely suspected that Arizona Public Service, the state's largest electricity provider, funneled that money into it. APS has repeatedly refused to either admit or deny that they've done that. And it's had this shadow over the commission for the last 2 years.
Bob, my question though is, okay, so they blocked the attorney hired, okay. Can Burns still subpoena APS?
He can. The reason he went this route is that he doesn't have the resources to do it himself. The staff's not going to do it. They turned to him yesterday and said, well, you can just use your own office budget to do that. He says, I don't have the staff. I don't have the office budget to do this. I hired this outside attorney who's a nationally recognized expert in utility regulation because he has the expertise to go and do all these things, to do the subpoenas, to find out if either side, either the solar side, this all goes back to the big battle between solar and regular power, is unduly influencing the commission.
Right, and as Bob Burns explained before, if you subpoena APS, they could essentially give you just what's called a data dump. Here are all the documents. There's 5 rooms of documents, have at it, and it will take forever to sort through those. And that's why he's taking this route Bob mentioned, so that there's some method to it, and there's somebody who's an expert who can actually look at, or who knows what he's looking at to begin with.
So this meeting yesterday sounded like an even more enthusiastic exchange of ideas than the Corporation Commission debate, which we had earlier in the week, which quickly evolved, or devolved, if you will, into everyone at this table attacking Bob Burns. I mean, whether he likes it or not, and he probably likes it, he's the outsider in this race as far as the Republicans are concerned.
Yeah, he's absolutely, I think, ostracized himself from the rest of both the sitting commissioners and his fellow Republicans who are all seeking the nominations this year. And some of it's by design. I think he decided early on, a while ago, that he was going to try to get to the bottom of this APS 2014 election thing. And, he's not a neophyte. I think he realized what that was going to do, at least in terms of separating him from his colleagues. And on the campaign trail, you have 5 people running. It turns into a bit of a blood sport at a certain point.
Yeah.
He's been called the Democrat among the
during
Republicans.
the debate, Al Melvin called him a Democrat.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's been out there for a while. You've been hearing that, not whispered but shouted by a lot of his opponents. He has. It is clear that the 4 sitting members, only 3 voted yesterday against Bob Burns' proposal to spend this money to hire an outside lawyer, but Tom Freese was on the phone for most of the meeting, and his questions led us, one could be led to believe that he would have voted with the 3. We're at the point where Bob Burns is the odd man out, but he believes he's standing up for the public, and the members of the commission that are in there now say, you're unduly smearing this commission. We are clean as the driven snow. We had nothing to do with any outside spending anyway. You're impugning our integrity, and knock it off.
Right. The interesting thing about it is that the commission initiated an investigation into whether APS and other groups are influencing unduly the commission. That's dead for now. But there are other investigations going on. The FBI is investigating the Corporation Commission. We know the U.S. Attorney's Office is looking into APS's role into the 2014 elections as well. And even APS itself, the Pinnacle West board had launched its own investigation into APS's role 2 years ago during the elections.
So those investigations are happening, but this one that Bob Burns wants will not. Okay,
No.
I want to keep moving here because we had talk about an odd man out. We had a definite man out as far as the congressional race is concerned. Speaker of the House, David Gowan, his campaign never caught on, and now he's adios.
Yeah, he really had a hard time getting traction in the 1st Congressional District, which is a really expansive district,
Yes.
Pinal County to eastern Arizona up to Flagstaff and the whole northern part of the state. He announced yesterday that he was ending his campaign and he was going to throw his support and urge his followers to support Gary Keeney, a rancher from eastern Arizona. It's interesting. I mean, this is the Speaker of the House, someone who, you would expect to enter one of these races, certainly as a front runner with some momentum, with kind of the gravitas that comes with that sort of position, and it clearly did not do him any favors in this race. I think from the word go, he was behind in polling and behind in fundraising. Certainly was running tough competition. I mean, Pinal County Sheriff Paul Babu has a lot of name ID, national name ID, a really good fundraising network that David Gowan was just really never able to match.
Through his support behind Gary Keeney, who oddly enough beat the previous Speaker of the House. What's going on there?
Well, the Speaker of the House, when you're Speaker or you're Senate President, you think you have a lot of power and you think everybody knows you. Well, all of us know him because we're down at the Capitol chasing him around all the time, but the people in his district know him. But he's just a name to everybody else. And so you suddenly have this sprawling district and you have to go out and A, raise money, B, be a good candidate, which you can get elected as a legislative district and be a horrible candidate, but you can't do that on a statewide or on a congressional seat. You've got to be a good candidate.
And you can't do that when the Capital Times is writing stories about your travel curiosities.
Right. And the fact of the matter is that David Gowan entered the race. True, as Speaker of the House, he has some platform, perhaps bigger than the other candidates, but he is saddled by baggage. By a whole lot of them. There was a whole controversy about his use of state resources. He has, in effect, admitted to gaining or getting state money by reimbursing himself for travel expenses he shouldn't be reimbursed for. Also giving himself per diem money for days that he wasn't working. So there's that. The other thing, and Bob mentioned, Jim mentioned it too, is that I don't know if you call it a blessing or a curse if you're Speaker of the House or Senate President and then you're running for higher office. We've looked at, as far as our records show, as far back as 1982, there was never a Speaker of the House or Senate President that has won a congressional race. There are, and especially if you're not going to resign and run, it's really hard for you to win.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was Andy Biggs is perhaps in a better position to win his CD5 race than David Gowan ever was, which would be a bit fitting because it was Matt Salmon who was the last legislator who did not resign and won his office.
Right. It's a much more compact district over there, of course. And,
Right, yes.
And Paul Babu has his own baggage too. When Gowan dropped out, he said everybody should be doing everything they can to keep Paul Babu from winning the primary because he's got baggage. The Democrats are going to attack him. He's not going to be able to win the general. And then, Wendy Rogers, who's also running, has been throwing out rehashing some of the old stuff from Paul Babu from a few years ago, which I won't go into right now. So it's quite interesting.
All right, before we go, live caller poll of likely voters by Data Orbital, a political consulting firm apparently. John McCain well ahead of Kelly Ward.
Yeah, not terribly surprising, I don't think. I think McCain certainly has been vulnerable this primary election, but again, talk about campaigns that we haven't really seen signs of them getting traction and kind of getting that momentum that they need. Kelly Ward, has certainly been driving across the state and up and down and back and forth and meeting with voters and just trying to do everything she can, with kind of a shoestring budget, but doesn't look as though it's going to be enough to take out John McCain, although I guess we'll find out more later this month.
And we should mention that the Trump non-endorsement was kind of good for Ward for a while. Now that he's endorsed McCain, she can't run with that.
No, she can't run with that. And more importantly, I don't think anyone was surprised by this poll because all you have to do is look who John McCain is running ads against. He's not spending $100,000 on Kelly Ward ads. He's attacking Democrat Ann Kirkpatrick.
All right, we got to stop it right there. Gentlemen, good to have you here. Monday on Arizona Horizon, a rebroadcast of our interview of former President Jimmy Carter, who talks about his life, his political career, and his most recent book. That's Monday on Arizona Horizon. Tuesday, a new study looks at the impact of road debris on fatal car crashes. Wednesday, a conversation with ASU President Michael Crow on the eve of another academic year. Thursday, Arizona Senator Jeff Flake joins us in studio, and Friday, it's the Journalists Roundtable. That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thanks for joining us. You have a great weekend.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.